The Contracts-Remedies fact pattern from February of 1999 affords us an excellent opportunity to review contracts and contracts remedies. This is a well-constructed, not terribly difficult problem, and it should be a useful one for everybody. Take a look at the call of the question. 1. Was Maker obligated to sell the presses to News for $2.4 million? Discuss. 2. Assume Maker was so obligated. What are News's rights and remedies against Maker? Discuss. Well, we can learn a lot about this fact pattern just from the call of the question. Look at call number 1. It's basically asking us whether or not News has a theory of liability in contracts against Maker. It also tells us that it's likely we are dealing with the UCC and that both of the parties are merchants. In question 2, it looks as if we are being asked about rights and remedies, but since question 1 is really asking about rights, question 2 tips us off to the idea that remedies are going to be in play here. If we've got a party obligated under an agreement, specific performance likely is to be at issue. So now we turn to the top of the question, and we see fairly quickly a straightforward UCC problem presenting itself. Look at paragraph 1. Here we meet the parties, Maker and News. News has decided to buy new printing presses, or a new printing press, and they meet with a representative of Maker. We see rep drawing some rough plans, making a sales pitch, and leaving those rough plans with the boss of News. In paragraph 2, we see an offer. Boss gets a letter signed by seller on December 1, offering to sell these presses at the $2.4 million price tag that is alluded to in call of the question number 1. The offer contains provisions relating to delivery, warranties, payment terms, but importantly, it does not specify a particular mode of acceptance. Well, off here in the world of the UCC, we know that where no method of acceptance is specified in the offer, any reasonable method of acceptance will serve to create a binding contract. We're told that boss decides immediately to accept this offer, telephones the office. Seller is out of town, boss leaves a message. It looks good, I'm sold, call me back, call me when you get back so we can discuss details. Now, I admit there are a couple of different ways we could interpret this statement. The way I choose to interpret it is as an acceptance. It is possible we could look at this language and call it a further negotiation, as opposed to a completely binding acceptance. I think the better interpretation is, since boss has immediately decided to accept, those words he spoke are going to be deemed an acceptance. In paragraph 3, we learn about some detrimental reliance on the part of News. An outstanding offer by Presco is rejected, and also work has begun on the necessary renovations to the News plant in order to accommodate the expected new printing press. In paragraph 4, the President of the U.S. announces a ban on imports of foreign computerized heavy equipment, and that includes printing presses, and it takes away from the American market a foreign manufacturer that had really been the only competitor of Maker and Presco. Later that afternoon, December 5, Maker sends News a telegram stating all outstanding offers are withdrawn. Well, if we look at that phone message as an acceptance, the offer from Maker was no longer outstanding, but in fact already had been accepted. Finally, we learn about a subsequent conversation where seller tells boss that Maker will not deliver the presses for less than $2.9 million. So basically, the seller's trying to score a quick $500,000 of excess profits, taking advantage of the changing circumstances caused by the president's announcement. Then we get the call of the question again, is Maker obligated to sell these presses at that price? And if so, what are News Company's rights and remedies? Well, take a look at my outline, and I think you'll see this is a very simple question that can be outlined rather easily. Let's have a look at my outline. I indicate up front that this is a UCC transaction, then we go into contract formation. We've got to find a home for all of those facts, and you'll see, once again, since we have a cluster of facts, all of which deal with the same issue, I use those facts as an organizing principle. I use the facts as headings when there's no law to serve as headings. And after we consider those formation issues, I go to the defense to formation, which is maker's claim that the offer was withdrawn on the 5th of December. It seems to me that that will not be an adequate defense to allow the maker to escape liability for this contract. I fix the breach on maker and the date on December 5th, when the telegram was received and the subsequent conversation between the seller and boss. Next, we consider the maker's defenses to breach, impracticality and impossibility, and frustration of purpose. All of these are lousy defenses, and that's what my conclusion is. Next, we consider remedies. I've got a separate section each for damages, restitution, and equity, but the bottom line here is News is going to seek specific performance, and as you'll see, I conclude that the plaintiff wins and will also win a specific performance order. Now let's have a look at the answer that I present. Really, I think the hard part is outlining, and once we've got our answer set up, it's really only secretary's work, or probably paralegal work, to write the answer. So have a look. Up front, you notice I repeat the call of the question, and I indicate right at the beginning that in order to establish maker's obligations, we have to do a contracts analysis. It's a UCC contract, and then I focus on formation. And take a look. In fact, all of those little internal headings about formation from the facts find their way into my answer as headings. And here again, you'll also see that I find a home for every factual detail. And I do so in the context of analysis. I am not merely copying the fact pattern. I'm finding specific homes for these facts, and I'm taking care to meticulously interpret the facts with regard to the legal issues being presented. Basically, as I indicated before, I find the phone message to be an acceptance, and I find the acceptance effective upon dispatch. I continue with the analysis, and there's no great surprise. We get to part C, the defense to formation. You'll see that I am, again, doing what I think you will agree is fairly comprehensive factual analysis. Have a look and see if you don't agree. Ultimately, we get to the remedies section, and I start off with damages. And I indicate up front that those damages are inadequate, because the bottom line here in this factual situation is that the plaintiff cannot be made whole with money. And the reason is money will not buy printing press, any printing presses in the current market situation. So remember, the UCC strongly prefers damages as a remedy, but even the UCC itself allows for specific performance in appropriate situations. And the situation presented by this fact pattern is exactly such a situation. So we go through the elements of specific performance, and ultimately I conclude that News will win specific performance and that Maker will be obligated to sell and deliver the printing presses for the agreed upon purchase price of $2.4 million.